And I'm thrilled to present our host, really. I'm not doing any of the hard work. We have some wonderful experts to do that for our It Takes a Team session, your volunteer management to maximize impact. Next slide, please. And our very first expert to share with you some wonderful nuggets about their volunteer program is Lori Michael. She's the president of the board of directors at New Mexico Horse Rescue at Walking in Circles Ranch in Stanley, New Mexico, which is just outside Albuquerque. And they are a wonderful adoption partner of the Right Horse, and we're so excited to have you. So it's all off to you, Lori. Thank you so much, and take us away.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you all. I'm really excited to be with all of you here today. I really wish that photo was me, but it isn't. Close, though. I do own some chinks that look almost like that, so I think that counts. And it kind of looks like New Mexico too. So we'll go with that. As Christine said, I am from Walking in Circles Ranch. We are located about 45 minutes east of Albuquerque, pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. We became a 501c3 rescue 20 years ago in January. So we are celebrating our 20th anniversary next year and have lots of exciting plans for that. We currently care for about 40 horses at a time on our 30-acre ranch. Next slide, please. So like all of you, we really would not be able to run our rescue without the help of great volunteers. Our volunteers work side by side with our small staff of 6. That includes a ranch operations manager who lives on site. She's also a vet tech, a really great resource for us. We have an executive director, newly hired as of November, a finance manager, and admin support in addition to our board. So far this year, we have had 168 individuals give at least 4 hours of their time to us, but 80 of those folks actually have given so far an average of 25 hours each month to us this year. This is really our core group that we rely on for all the day-to-day operations that are listed there on the slide below. Next slide. So to help facilitate all of this, we have one volunteer coordinator who is actually also a volunteer, and she manages our monthly volunteer orientations, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And she's also the direct link to all of our new volunteers. She works with them to identify their skills and their interests so that they can get plugged into one or more of the various volunteer teams that we have. And you can see those teams listed here. Our water team definitely deserves recognition, especially in the winter months. But so far we haven't had that much ice, but it's coming. What's not listed on this slide is our thrift store volunteer team, which is really a vital component to our program. Our store generates nearly 40% of our operating revenue each year, so we really can't underestimate the value that those volunteers have to our bottom line. We currently have about 10 volunteers that work consistently at our thrift store, and we have one thrift store manager. Next slide. So we actually have been very fortunate that we typically don't struggle to recruit new volunteers. We really get most of our volunteers through word of mouth, but we also have a robust website and social media that folks find through online searches. We request from volunteers wanting to attend our first orientation a $35 donation, and this is for a 2-day orientation. And we also welcome minors ages 8 to 17 at no charge if they have a parent or guardian accompany them. All of our orientations have been on a Saturday, but for next year, 2022, we've decided to offer a weekday option too, because our orientations have filled up months in advance. We usually stop accepting registrations when we reach 15 per session, because that's really a manageable amount for what we are asking them to do in orientation. We find that of the 15, typically 12 will actually show up. And then of the 12, about 10 will begin attending the following sessions and are very likely to become one of our regular volunteers. And so that's each month. Our 2-day orientation provides an overview of our ranch and our thrift store operations, as well as a lot of hands-on instruction on how to muck, feed, and water the herd. And for those interested in handling horses, we provide a full curriculum of in-hand skills. Volunteers can choose really how far they want to go, and then they can continue with much more advanced horse training classes at just $10 a donation per class. And because consistency is really so important for rescue horses in particular, our trainers have developed a curriculum to help all volunteers interact with the horses in the same way. And we acknowledge that there are many, many ways to train a horse, but we have a very standardized way that we train our volunteers and our horses to help maintain that consistency, and it's been very successful. Next slide. So the reason I think our recruitment of volunteers comes so easy is really primarily because of the robust hands-on training that we offer. We are so fortunate to have 2 highly regarded horse trainers working for us. And folks realize that, you know, this type of training that they can receive from us is worth so much more than the very little bit they donate to take these classes. Our learning really never stops. And so this ongoing hands-on training is invaluable, not just to the volunteers, but of course to the horses as well. So our volunteers can choose for themselves how far they want to advance in their training. Our classes all build upon each other. So a volunteer must be evaluated and assessed by a trainer before taking the next class. The level that of a horse a trainer is eligible to work with depends on the amount of training that they complete with us. So our trainers will also assess the skills of a horse and assign a horse based on a level 1 through a level 5. A level 1 is the easiest to handle horse, and a level 5, of course, is the most difficult. And only our trainers typically handle level 5 horses. Yeah, let's go on to the next slide. I think that we'll be sharing some more details on our program by providing a link at the end of this session. And you can certainly reach out to me if you have more questions about that as well. So most of our volunteers participate in direct tasks, and all of which impact adoptions in some way, of course. To help with the actual adoption process, we have an adoption team of 3 individuals who schedule visits between interested adopters, the horses and trainers. They conduct adopter facility inspections, collect adoption fees, take photos of each adoption, and follow up with the adopters after horses go home. They have a really busy but fun job. And then, of course, we couldn't adopt horses without marketing them. So we have 1 volunteer that manages website for each horse, social media, photography, public and media relations, and all of that kind of stuff. Next slide. So I would say the biggest impact our volunteers have on adoptions is through our in-hand training that they do to help our horses, of course, become ready for their forever homes. And to encourage this ongoing commitment to this, as well as promote a bit of good-hearted competition among our volunteers, we hold an annual in-hand volunteer training challenge. Volunteers who want to participate in this challenge commit to a 3-month time period where they are paired with a horse that best matches their skill level, and then they'll attend weekly training sessions with that horse conducted by our trainers. And these sessions cover important skills like desensitizing, lunging around pen, in-hand obstacles, and of course, trailer loading. These challenges really help build camaraderie among our volunteers, I think. Everyone gets into it and cheers each other on. and we celebrate and everyone's successes with their horses. And then at the end, we typically name a winning volunteer and horse, and we award prizes in various categories. But of course, the real winners are the horses. Next slide. At the end of the 3 months, each horse in the challenge is much, much more adoptable because of the skills that they have learned. And the volunteers, of course, have gained plenty of knowledge to help with other horses. Of the 10 horses who competed in this year's challenge that just ended in August, more than half have already found their forever homes in actually less than 90 days. So it really has been a definite win-win for everyone. And to wrap up, one more slide. So while the direct work to get our horses adopted is of course crucial, we can't forget all the indirect benefits that our volunteers provide to us. Because of their strong connection they make with our horses, many volunteers end up actually adopting horses for themselves. In fact, I'm a great example of one that got suckered into adopting a horse, and it's been the best decision. But most of our former and current volunteers are really some of the most loyal financial supporters we have, and they're also really strong advocates in our community. They're our best cheerleaders by far. So when it really comes right down to it, volunteers are the lifeblood of our organizations, and they are really the reason why we are able to accomplish all that we do. So as I bring this to a close, I hope I was able to give you some helpful nuggets on volunteer impact, and I thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lori. And as you mentioned, here is the link to all the details about those amazing the training levels that the horses have. And if people can save that for later and read that detail on their own time, so we can focus on the wonderful other 2 presenters who we have. But it is a lot of great detail. I'm also seeing some really good questions in the chat. And it looks like right now we're a little bit ahead. So we will come back for some questions at the end of the session when we've had our other 2 presenters go. And then again, we'll also be able to address those in the Facebook group. So Robin and Cookie, we see your questions and we'll hold them to the end.
Here I am.
Okay. In the meantime, we are ready to go to the next segment of our volunteer session. Thank you so much, Lori. And Lori will be with us for the rest of the session and hopefully the rest of the summit to continue sharing her wisdom. So we really appreciate it, Lori. And I'm happy to introduce Christine Devanche, who's the operations manager from Horseless Haven in Howell, Michigan. And Christine, if you are ready, take it away.
I am ready. Thank you, Christy. And I am so excited to be here with all of you today. These are just great fun days that we always walk away with lots of information and that we can come back and apply to our own farms. We're located in Howell, Michigan, which is in southeastern Michigan. And unlike we have seen snow and ice so far this year, so we are all bundled up ready for winter. We are established as a nonprofit, so we are celebrating our 26th year this year. We have a 70 horse capacity and a staff of 5. There is myself, rehabilitation and training manager, Joanne, who is also a vet tech. And I have a part-time property manager who manages a 4-person maintenance team. And I do and always have paid someone to clean stalls so that I don't have to worry about that. So that's our staff. And please. Volunteers have always been a huge part of our mission. The farm for the first about 16 years was computer run. As we made the transition to an adoption agency versus mostly a sanctuary, we staff a little bit. They are integral to our mission with 70 horses on site, 23 pastures, the horse barn, 18 stacking hay and all the things that come into the day-to-day. Our volunteers handle all day-to-day operations of the team. The biggest part of my perspective is the communication, and we've had to really be creative with how we set up the teams, who's in charge, who we get communicate, talk about that a little more. But they do impact our mission at the utmost foundation, because without them, we could not do any implicit our mission. Next slide, please. So the nuts and bolts of the farm with the volunteers, we have at any given time 85 to 110 volunteers. They volunteer an average of 2,400 hours per month. We run 2 shifts a day, 7 days a week, 360 a year. The shifts are 7:30 a.m. to approximately 1, and then start again at 4 p.m. and usually wrap up somewhere. Each shift has a team lead, a co-team lead, a grain chef, and 3 to 5 additional team members. Something about our shifts is that they all commit to the same day. So this group of people for each shift becomes like very family-like. We call it they do potlucks and they do extracurricular activities outside the farm together. We do try to encourage people to shifts when they first start to find the group that they best get along with, and whether that's age or interest. They typically will try 1 or 2 shifts with a shift and stay for a long time. I mean, we have volunteers that have been here 18 years. My team lead out there today is 7 years. We have a 40-person volunteer groom team. We cap out somewhere around 45 is what we're a groom team we can get into later, but is super important to our mission as well. And our volunteer maintenance team averages about 4 to 5 people. They take care of the fencing. 23 pastures, a 4-board wood fencing is cumbersome if you don't have a team that likes to use saws. And then they handle all of our pasture dragging, or, someone's out there putting a couple new shingles on the horse barn today. So they're in the farm neat, clean, and in good working order. Next slide, please.
Hey, Christine, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're a little tiny bit choppy. So I wonder if you tried turning off, maybe just turn off your video and see if that helps your bandwidth a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Do I need to repeat anything, or are we good to start on this slide?
I think we got the most of it. I can still see you though. Great, but okay. There we go. Okay.
There we go. Okay. So I did inherit a strong volunteer. They were running, when I took over a few years ago, it was 4 to 5 people per shift. With the amount of and activity at the farm, we did increase that and will run up to 10 people per shift. But they come through, it started years ago, and each person has a different market and all of that. But when they started with volunteers, they had signs with little local businesses, and people would rip off a number and they would call. We do post some social media posts about volunteers, but volunteers come from community exposure and our reputation through adoptions. So we will take horses to local events. We do a respite at a couple churches. We have some libraries that invite us out for their kid programs, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, shops. We went shopping with a Mini and Dover saddlery. We are going to a jewelry store on December 17th with Olaf for an ugly sweat. And those things, getting out in the community, I find gets us those long-term volunteers, because they don't have the hour-and-a-half drive I think is okay until you're in a winter Michigan. So it really hits the local crowd. When we're done with any activity out in the community, we will go with whatever animal we have and have some flyers and some information with us then. And that's always a big hit as well. We have done a lot of relationship building with our local colleges. Michigan State University has a robust veterinary program, and we have partnered with them to students hands-on farm-style veterinary experience here at the barn. So we see a group of vet students once a month. I speak a year to the horsemen's associations that are at the colleges. University of Michigan has a pre-vet club, and they once or twice a semester, and they can kind of develop their own program based on their skills. Do they want to work on more health-related that day, or are they new horse people and do they want to learn how to handle horses and just get a look at the equine world? And then reputations through it. I've seen so many volunteers in the past 2 years come through and say, my friend adopted a horse. I saw a horse at the barn that came from you. What do you guys do? And those volunteers from those avenues tend to be the ones that stay for years and years and years. Next slide, please. Am I still at, Christy?
You still sound good.
Okay, so it's not breaking up a lot. Okay. One of the bigs on adoptions our volunteers have is our Groom Team. We did try lots of different things over the last 5 or 6 years, settled into being our most successful way of engaging our volunteers with the horses. So our grooms work with our companions, and there was a question from the last presentation. We do have a high ratio. We have 50 spots that are for any horse and 20 hold for rideable horses. And the 20 spots turn over really quickly. About a third of our adoptions are companion-only horses each year. So I could have 25 to 50 not rideable horses on site. So it's really crucial for them that they can be good equine citizens as well. The Groom program is contingent on them working a regular shift, because I think everyone would rather come out at their leisure and groom horse that come out when it's minus 16 degrees and feed and water. So they do have to participate in a regular shift. Then they're assigned a Groom Team leaders that we work with in order to teach the grooms the skills that they are going to use horses become good candidates for adoption. The STAR program is what we call it, and it is a program 4 levels: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. The grooms are trained and the horses at the same time. So it's looking at and the human, and they come test with one of us, and testing day is always very fun. We like to keep things positive. We post them on their private art pages that they pass this level and a picture. Bronze starts with very basic stuff. I know Christy is going to share those with everyone later, and moves to and basic stuff, meaning in the pasture. At the bronze level, they don't even take the horse out of the pasture. And up at the platinum level, they move into things, and they're allowed to use our outdoor rehabilitation and training obstacle course. The levels, we use the behavioral profiles from the right horse to help create the STAR program, so that when we shift those to the right horse page, we can answer those questions better. Next slide. So some of our biggest challenges in shifting to agency with more turnover and more staff oversight, the volunteer sense of ownership, because it was almost run by volunteers for so many years. They became close to their favorite horses, and they did have a choice on everything. They had a choice on when that horse was. So we had to address this through lots of conversation. Over time, it changed the culture and in how the volunteers felt. And at this point, the conversation, especially around euthanasia, is very open. They will come and say, oh my gosh, time to euthanize them. And I think the biggest part of them is seeing horses be able to walk out to the garden to say goodbye versus, lying in a stall suffering. So there was that happened 4 or 5 years ago. That was my biggest challenge in tackling the culture of the organization itself. Joanne and I were certified in equine nutrition through Michigan State University in order to give our volunteers confidence about the changes that were being made. And we host things, we do clinics for our volunteers, everything from nutrition classes to, we try to mix up practical clinics and fun clinics to involve everyone. Some people aren't interested in learning some of the more done tasks, but they still like to have fun things to do on downtime with their groom horse or horses after their shift is complete. So our program has really redirected everyone into having still a sense of ownership and participation that keeps them here as long, and it gives them a true sense of making a difference in a horse's life when they see that companion horse change from what they are to having the skills to go out and be a great friend to another horse. Next slide, please. All right, tackling the challenges. This part was interesting. Emily always says change is messy, and it like change, and messy was fun. But it did take a couple of years to decide what everyone's roles are going to be. One of the challenges for us, length of stay. Length of stay was close to 100 plus days for our rideable horses, or even longer. And we did start with a volunteer rehab team to work with our horses under saddle. And what we found was Joanne and I spent most of our time desperately trying to train this staff, and we were not training horses anymore. And so our length of stay was increasing rather than decreasing. So we did choose to move to staff only for young horses, feral horses. And to give a picture, there's 70 horses, 100 volunteers, there's 30 people here a day. The consistency is removed if people, there's 10, 20 people handling each baby. We have on site right now, and it is a big challenge to get them handled the same way every shift, every day. And so having staff on site that can do that has been integral. We have reduced our length of stay to now I can't remember. I think the rideable horses is 60 or 71 days, which was a big increase for us decrease for us over the last couple of years. We make sure that, this was a challenge separately. Okay. So one of the challenges we used to have is people showing up for orientation or showing up for their shift in riding boots, bridges, and a helmet. And instead of giving them all their paperwork when they're here, we did create all the waivers, all the paperwork, and explanations on everything you're going to do on your shift go ahead of time. And we get their agreement before that orientation happens. We're a little different. We don't have set orientations. My volunteer coordinator is a volunteer as well. She actually works 4 separate shifts during the week, and she schedules them in groups. So she'll do up to 5 or 6, and she'll hold them once or twice a week if needed. Next slide, please. Budgeting and management. Christy, we talked about the new slide with how we communicate with our volunteers. Can I go off track and talk about that here, or is that added in at the end somewhere?
Sure, you can add that right here. It should be here, but go ahead.
Should be here. Nope, I'll just wait in the end. So just remind me to come back to that before we move away from the volunteers themselves. So budgeting, we don't have a large budget for volunteers. We do give them a Christmas present every year, and until the last 2 years, a volunteer appreciation day of some sort. I usually let the volunteers plan that. One person wanted to have a camp out at the farm and have a bonfire and that kind of thing. Some people, when they have the opportunity to plan it, will do, a grill, a cookout, or try to arrange something offsite. Next slide, please. Turnover. So our run, we have seasoned team leads. They're people that have been here for a long time, and we let them choose. We can train another member to be a team trainer, or they can be their team trainer. But each shift has to have someone that's capable of training the new volunteers in a positive, successful way. Our biggest focuses are safety, with the task of the volunteers do all the turnout, turn in, everything day to day. So we want to ensure we do have a significant number of volunteers who are seasonal, whether they're students at the universities nearby or they fly off somewhere in the winter. That's okay with us. Our shifts get slimmer in the winter here in Michigan, as you might expect, but they still have at least 5 people per shift. Do try to really nurture their sense of commitment and ownership to the herd. We have a private Facebook page for the volunteers. And whenever we have updates or check-ins with the horses that have been adopted, we like to post those there. So you being in the loop on that horse's life. And it gives them a sense of closure that we get by delivering the horses and signing the contract, and they come in the next time they're there and that horse is there. So they don't have that sense of closure. So the private Facebook page offers them that. I talked about this a little bit already, but the fun and practical days. Some examples of that are just searching out people who are willing to donate time. Yesterday, I had a saddle fitter come out. She was willing to donate a couple hours for my rehabilitation team, and a couple of the volunteers that have horses or participate at the groom level. And so they got to learn a lot about saddles and what to look for in your saddle and how to fit a saddle and how to look at the move different saddles. And those are the things that we talked about, like being certified in equine nutrition. These are the things that lend authority to the changes that we make and the policies we make, is having professionals come in and reinforce all of that. We have a vitals clinic coming up next. Volunteers that are interested in learning how to safely take and report horse vitals. What else have we done, Joanne, with clinics? We have done, we've done showmanship clinics. We had a little show for our volunteers. We bought ribbons and had them dress appropriately, just like if they were taking their horses off-site for the show. And I did have a judge that volunteered her time to come in and judge the show. So it was very real. And they do remember that. They ask for it. And when all of this COVID stuff is done, we will continue that yearly, because that was really fun. Next slide, please. So turnover. Most of the people that are going to leave really do so within the first couple shifts. But like I had mentioned before, a lot of our volunteers are 10 years. We do get an average of 12 inquiries per week. Approximately 40% make it to an orientation, and 75% for a minimum of 6 months. Next slide. Some keys to why we really feel the volunteers stay is that sense of family. They do commit to the same shift. So, I sit here, it's Thursday morning. I could name the people that are out there working together. It's the same people every Thursday, and they become friends. And it's a way, I think, really solidify in their day and their life something that is consistent and important to them. We do have volunteers work more shifts per week. I have Amy who works 4 shifts a week. And we have volunteers who are either really far away or they're a little bit older. Our old 76 years old, and she comes every other week, and she has a special stool in the grain room. She's our grain chef on every other Thursday. And she also writes all of our thank you notes to everyone who makes a donation to us. So really trying to find ways to accommodate anyone, passion and the time to donate to us, or their time is important to us, making sure there's a place for everyone, right? slide, please. The positive environment is really fun. We have leads and managing them as a whole is very easy. They're all very good at working, but just consistently reinforcing this is not a paid job for these people. They are volunteering their time. So running around and yelling at people and your team is not a good thing. And that is something we have to revisit often. This picture right here, there's a couple kids there, or maybe this one's only one. Becca, the gal with the lead rope around her neck, is one of our co-team leads, and she does make sure to keep it really fun, really positive, letting people learn new things, praising them, keeping them safe on the ice. These are things we want to make sure they know we care about them, but there are volunteer team leads and have treated it like a job, which is wonderful. We all want to I wish all volunteers treated it like a job, but it is not the corporate world. They are volunteers. We need all the time, forgive small mistakes, and learn them. When horses get out of their pasture, they aren't going to go far. Next slide, please.
And it's totally my fault, Christine. I missed that slide that you mentioned. So it'd be great if you could just mention that verbally.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things give to Christy until the last minute. So it is my fault. I left out of the questionnaire communication. So we have all of these shifts happening today. How do we all work cohesively together with me staying in the loop? As we grow, I'm out there talking to the shifts less and less. I'll look at the whole day in front of the computer. So there's two different important forms of communication. One is our herd health text thread. All team leads are trained in basic herd health 101. So our team leads need to communicate with us on anything of concern. And a text to our herd health team, which is myself, Joanne's a vet tech, and another board member, and who is a trainer and has been around for a long time. Decision at that point to offer a treatment plan, ask for a photo and video, make a decision to check the next day, come up that moment, or call the veterinarian. So that is a team lead in their job description. That is something that they have to maintain with us, communication on the horse's health throughout the shift. Second thing that is really important to flowing from one shift to the next shift when there's lots of, they come in and the pastures are different. There's new horses every single on, feeding protocols change, who has medication changes, is that there's a team lead email thread that after your shift, send an email report on your shift that all the team leads get. So 2 times a day, we do get kind of a report on how it went, what things happened. I can interject in there. We are on the thread. We can interject if we want to make a change, offer a suggestion or clarify that someone might have had. So all team leads are kept in the constant loop all week long on what's happening at the farm. When we have, we want all the volunteers to know, I also communicate through the team lead thread, and I just label it differently, and the team leads are responsible for sending it to all of their active volunteers 12 hours. So communication was a big thing to sort out to keep everybody on the same page. Okay, now I'm done.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christine. And you mentioned some really great resources. We will share a link to those. There's some, Christine has been so gracious as to share the STAR program levels that you can read in detail, as well as the AM and PM shift checklist and the team lead job description. And so if you're looking to create some of those documents, that's a wonderful resource that Christine has shared, and we'll post that link here in the chat at the end, so you can go access all of that. It's also got links to the Walking in Circles Ranch volunteer training path, so you can see all that good stuff that we've mentioned or has been mentioned briefly, and go and take a look. So we will, again, thank you for being so willing to share those resources with everybody here. And
absolutely, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. And your audio sounded just a little tiny bit choppy, but I think we got the vast majority of it. So we'll just, we all do the best with the internet that we're working with. And I think we're good. And Christine will be with us through the rest of the day. And then also we'll have that Facebook group post to continue the conversation on. So plenty of time to continue connecting. All right. Thank you so much, Christine. And I'm pleased to introduce Nancy Turner, the president of This Old Horse in Hastings, Minnesota, who's probably also seen some snow and ice this year already, I would guess. And I'm ready. We are ready for your wisdom. Nancy, take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. Next slide, please. We asked our community to support our horses. And we ask our horses to support our community right back. We think that it's important for people to come and be a part of our mission in large, and that our horses then give back by being wonderful and giving volunteers an experience of connecting with them. So next slide, please. So balancing the needs of the organization with the needs of the volunteers requires an affirmative commitment. The contribution of volunteers has to be valued at every level, regardless of how many hours a volunteer commits or what kind of skills or experience a volunteer has. If we don't have a welcoming place for a volunteer to experience, learn, or make a positive contribution at the point of service, we have no business recruiting them to help. We have had over 3,200 volunteers engaged in our program since 2012. And you can see, you can read for yourself, we average about 300 volunteers a month. This Old Horse has 15 different farms that we directly manage, with over 300 horses a day that we provide services to. And many of our farms are all managed by volunteers, are all staffed by volunteers with the overall management. So the people that these volunteers interact with at the point of service will determine the success of their experience. Most volunteers come to us because they're interested in our mission, not the tasks that we need them to do. If you say that you're just going to come and pick stalls or pick manure, that's not as appealing as saying being part of this mission that helps horses. So you have to connect volunteers to our mission. The people who are volunteering and the people directing their activity need to understand how every task relates to our overall mission. So people want to help horses, that when they're doing something, you have to relate it back to how does this help horses, even if it's sweeping cobwebs or sanitizing water buckets. So our volunteer program begins with working with our stable hands, our lead volunteers, and our managers to reiterate our guiding principles. The guiding principles will influence the experience of volunteers, and the people, making sure all the people understand that is part of that experience. So next slide. The four guiding principles of our mission are that This Old Horse is a place that is kind, welcoming, safe, and values the contributions of our community. Next slide. Oops, no, stay on this one, sorry. Yes, next slide. The guiding principles have been came up with as a group, and that we want to make sure that when we talk about our mission, that we talk about the kindness that people experience, the horses and humans. So these are principles that we encourage of using kind and gentle language, that people and horses feel seen and cared for, and that we engage with warmth and openness. Next slide. That one of our values is that horses and people feel welcomed. So it's about greeting each other, getting to know people, honoring the roles, and celebrating the hard work with breaks, and create spaces that build community. One of the things, and this was mentioned by some of the other presenters, is that people have to feel part of the community, and not just that they're independently on their own there. So we found that in our bigger facilities, our bigger barns, that what works good for us is to have a break room or a lounge or a lobby, and where people at the end of their shift gather and celebrate with coffee, water, we had one volunteer, Helene, that I think had in 1 week had 3 birthday cakes that came in, and every day they celebrated Helene's birthday with the birthday cakes at their break. So part of this, giving people a space, not just to do their work, but to gather and communicate with one another, makes people feel very welcomed. So next slide. That one of the important things, for obvious reasons, is that we have a safe space, that the people who work here are well trained, that we have an environment where people feel they can ask questions, that they don't have to know everything. It's always safer if people ask instead of guess, and that we stick to our protocols and procedures. So we discourage freelancing. We'd rather have you ask. And part about being safe, just physically safe for horses and humans, is that it's a safe place to not know everything and to ask questions. Next slide. That the 4th guiding principle is to value the contributions of our community. And so that not only are we telling people what to do or how we do things, but we are also listening to them for process improvement and feedback to not just our volunteers, but also to our community. Is how can you experience this mission in a better way? You know, we're listening to your ideas, we're listening and responding to them. If you have a process improvement, we want to hear it, or there's an opportunity in the community. If the Hy-Vee store gives out free water for events, we want to know that. We want you to be connecting our mission and community and listening to. So next slide is about managing the process. I've heard the expression so many times that you can't fire a volunteer, and I completely disagree with that. You can absolutely fire a volunteer that fails to meet expectations, and you should. It's demoralizing to high performers when low performance is acceptable. We use a phrase called the lowest you accept is the highest you can expect. So high performers, volunteers or staff, will value the attention paid to respecting their contributions by having high expectations of volunteers or everyone else. So our volunteers are selected, onboarded, and supervised the same way as our paid employees. There's a needs assessment. Where do we need help? There's a job description, schedules. You can see down the list that all of this is done the same way that they would be a paid staff. There's no different expectations of volunteers or paid staff, and most of our workers are volunteers throughout our entire organization. We have a lead stable hand on every shift, and that is a paid or unpaid, depending on the person. But there's no different expectations of volunteers than there are for paid staff for any. So we want to make sure that we respect people's value in their work by having that. Our volunteer coordinator screens and interviews applicants and refers them to an identified on-site contact person for each program or even for an event. This is the point of service contact who then manages the training, expectations, and performance from that point on. Our volunteer coordinator is the person who directs the inquiries into the activities, but the on-site person manages that. If someone's not doing a very good job or not showing up, it doesn't go back to the volunteer coordinator to manage that. It's managed right at the point of service. So next slide. We have two websites. One is thisoldhorse.org, which is our public website, and we have thisoldhorse.com, which is our admin website. So within that admin, this is just a screenshot of that. Within that admin site, we have a homepage for our volunteers. And this is the site that they navigate from. They can access all of this stuff on that page, but this is their specific homepage. So next slide. Most of our volunteers work on our feed crews, and you see here some of the feed crew links that if they sign up, click that link, it will take them to a feed crew schedule. So next slide. This is an example of one of the feed shifts for November at one of the sites. And this is where you can see what's available. And in this case, all of the slots have been filled. They identify how many people they need for each slot. The volunteers can go on. Some of them might just sign up on their regular shifts, but if they have some free time or on break, or are not going to be there, they can add their name or take their name off of this so that everybody knows who's going to be there on what day, and each shift is on here. So the other thing about the feed shift I wanted to say is that when we look at a shift, depending how many horses are there, we have some that have 4 horses at the barn and some that have 60 horses at the barn. And what you have to know when they come in for a feed shift, when anyone comes in, is what is the scope of work that has to be done during that time, and what's the sequence of work in order to get it done efficiently. So if you have one person and you have to start with your hay, going up to your cleaning, that it goes in a certain sequence to be efficient. If there's 2 people working, then you divide that work by 2, and then the sequence might be different. You go do hay while I do water. If there's 4 people, so depending on the number of people that are on any given shift on any given day, you have to reorganize the work to fit that and see what can be extras or what's our, one person doing it can expect to be there longer. So the scope and sequence of the work is an important part of determining how many volunteers you need or how many people that you need on the schedule, regardless of if it's paid or unpaid staff. Next slide, please. Our volunteer coordinator screens and interviews all of our applicants and then refers them to this page, which is their pre-service training. So our volunteers, each of these are a training module, and our volunteers go and have to complete this series prior to their, not the employee handbook, that's for staff, but those give the expectations of what they can expect before they come, and to see if they want to move on to the on-site training. Then as they finish each of these modules, you see the gold box in the middle, that they complete a training record, which then just records a record of their orientation or any ongoing training. If these change, we refer our volunteers back to say the stable rules have been updated. Please go in and update your training record with the new policies and so on. So next slide, please. This is our documentation of incidents, changing condition, and postings are on this page. So our material data safety sheets and so on are all connected to this. If a volunteer notices a change of condition of a horse, for example, if there's an injury or illness or a change, if a horse doesn't finish all their feed or leaves so much, we ask them to record how much feed was left, because we weigh and measure our hay and feed, how much was left, and notice any trends of appetite changes and so on, or illness and injury or any activity the farrier and so on came. When our volunteers click on these links, it goes to a form that fills out, and when they fill the form, it automatically gets emailed to our leadership team for that barn, so they can be notified of that as the form is filled out. So next slide, please. So the next part is managing the process. And I find this to be a model that I've used for many, many years, of helping people understand what the process is about becoming engaged in the mission, fully engaged in the mission. And this is I didn't make this model up, but it resonated with me. And the first thing that when we start, if you move to a new school, start a new job, this is stages that people go through when something new happens to them. And the first stage that people usually go through with something new is they feel guilty. Volunteers are nervous when they arrive, and we expect them to be. You meet all kinds of new people and you promptly forget their names. We have 15 bay thoroughbred geldings in one turnout, and what are their names? They will not hit the ground running. And even if someone has prior experience, they very rarely have the experience that matches perfectly with yours. If we have a volunteer that has taken riding lessons all their life, it's not the experience of managing a feed crew that 50 horses are coming in and out for 3 shifts of feeding. So experience is only relative to if they've done exactly what you're doing. So everybody is going to feel a little bit guilty that they don't know what they're doing when they show up. They show ready to learn. But one of the things they feel is like the experienced people, it's taking time away from the real work if you have to train again, and people feel a little guilty about that, but they expect that. The second stage people is a very vulnerable stage where people feel phony, that they're coming in and they don't need that as much direct contact because you can go do this task without me side by side training you. But they haven't yet feel like they fit in, and they can reinforce themselves on their own performance, but they're not feeling like they're making a difference. And they're not being paid as much attention if they are brand new because the people who trained them in are off doing their other activities. And this is where they don't feel like they're making a difference. And people go through these stages regardless of how long it takes. If you're working 40 hours a week, you go through them faster. If you come in once a month, you're going to go through this more slowly. So the thing is that people need some attention at this phase. Check in. How you doing? How you feeling? Thank you. The third stage people go through is where they feel skilled. They fit in and they understand their role. They can reinforce themselves on their performance. They arrive and know what to do, how to do it, and where they kind of belong in the grand scheme of things. And the fourth stage that people get to in this experience is to feel integrated. And this is where we hope everybody gets to. But at this point, they have found their place within the organization and recognize their own value as it relates to the mission. They're on a particular crew that they always work with, that become close with, or there's a special horse that they connect with every time they come. And they come to understand that it's not the tasks or their reliable attendance that is valued, but it's their unique contribution. It matters that they are there, not that just someone is there. And that's our goal. So next slide, please. Our volunteers are our best ambassadors. So they recruit and they donate and they adopt. So our goal is to not overlook any opportunity for someone who wants to be a part of our mission. For example, our primary photographer is deaf. One of our stable hands, who also manages our open houses, is completely blind. A few of our volunteers have intellectual disabilities. Some have physical disabilities. And I have two just short stories to share. That a woman named Roz came to us after retiring from a teaching career. And she had limited mobility and used a wheelchair. And when she inquired, she said, "I'm not sure what I can do, but I've always loved horses." And our reply was that you're a teacher. You know, we put her to work, working on an activity table with stickers and worksheets, making stickers and worksheet kind of things at community events where our little horses, our miniature horses, go to community events. So Roz would set up her table with all of her activity because the little kids just throng the little horses. So in order to make it safe, Roz would set up this with her wheelchair, set up her little activity table and work with the kids as they waited their turn. So it turned out that Roz ended up buying a hobby farm. She built an accessible barn for herself that has a breezeway connected to her home, and she adopted 5 miniature animals from us, three mini horses and 2 mini donkeys. And she has her own hobby farm and her barn, and she has it set up where she can do all of her feeding hay. She needs a little bit of help with, doing some throwing hay down from the loft and so on, and she has someone that comes and helps her. But she called us to say, "I'm not sure if there's anything I can do," and ended up being invaluable to us, and then having her own hobby farm. Her lifetime dream, being a horse owner times 5, came true. And another short story that Diane is a volunteer that came to us in her late 70s, also a retired teacher, and she has some physical disabilities where she can't walk upright. She has a back injury, and she wasn't sure if there's anything that she can do because of her limitations. And right at the same time, we had a horse that came in as a rescue that was in very poor condition, that had pneumonia, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to pull him through the pneumonia, and we didn't. But for the month that we were trying, we asked Diane to just be a companion to him because he was stressed about this breathing. And she read and sang songs and just got to know this horse, got to love this horse. And she took care of his kind of emotional support. And then as people came to visit, she would tell his story, that just this is him and this is what I'm doing. And she became kind of an ambassador for hope for this horse. Well, she ended up then being part of our community, and the horse died, but she adopted a 31-year-old gelding from us then. And she, because of her height, she can only groom from the halfway mark down, but he was the most well-groomed legs of any horse you've ever seen. But he ended up dying at age 32. And then she adopted another older retired quarter horse, racehorse from us after George died. Well, she took all of our classes and all of our education, our path to ownership class, we call Unbridled, and she had gone through all that. And then she didn't show up 2 Sundays ago. She didn't show up for her class, and very reliable. And the facilitator of that program called the police to have her checked because she wasn't responding. And it had found that Diane had died in her home of natural causes. And what I loved, I mean, we miss her, but what I loved is that she didn't have any close family or children, but that because of her relationship with us, that being a volunteer with us, that she had her barn family that was checking on her, worried about her. And her memorial service will be at the barn in the spring, and they're going to scatter her ashes at the pasture. And so someone that came in and said, I'm not sure what I can do. Then it has become became such a big part of her life, which was very touching. Is very touching to me. So next slide, please. So the recognition of the say thank you every day. Everybody say thank you every day. Create space and time to gather where we work. We have a lot of volunteer swag with our website always on the back. So when people wear t-shirts to the gym, they're always marketing for us. And we have some special recognition events for our youth and so on annually too. So last slide. So this is, I'll start and end with the William Shakespeare, but thanks and ever thanks for the people that make this mission come true. We are responsible for the experience that people have with our organization. And at the end of every time people leave our barn, they're gonna share their story. And so our goal is to give them something positive to talk about. Well, thank you.